if you're sitting at like that turn or the beginning of the second round and you're not taking Julio, you and I have very different thoughts about how to win fantasy football leagues.
You're listening to Let's Talk Fantasy Football, where men of fantasy genius have realized, hey guys, we don't need real football skills to dominate on the fantasy field. Yeah. So slap on your pads and grab your helmet. Shit's about to get real.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of Let's Talk Fantasy Football. I'm your host tonight. My name is Nick Walsh, and I was originally supposed to be here with the DON, but unfortunately the DON is S-I-C-K. He's sick. He doesn't feel good. So instead, we have late fill-in, but still a wonderful person to be talking with tonight. We have Vinny Gonzalez. Vinny, what's going on, dude?
What's up, dude? It's great to be second string to Don. That's a feeling I never thought I'd have to feel in my life, but here I am, batting clean for the DON.
Not spectacular, but we'll make it work. We are talking about the NFC South this week. So this first podcast that you are hearing in your ears, we will be discussing the Saints and the Falcons. However, before we get into that, we will hear very quickly from Auction Draft. So Auction Draft is the best site for running your fantasy football auction league in 2018. You can sign up now and get on the list for launch by going to letstalkfantasyfootball.com/auction draft. And promo code Let's Talk Fantasy will give you 25% off your league. So definitely make sure to check that out. Vinny, this is an interesting division, and I'm pretty excited to talk about it. There's a lot of very fantasy relevant players, and a lot of players that are going pretty high up in the draft. I think you and I both have some pretty strong opinions on certain players here. So, you got anything before we jump right into the Saints, or are you ready to go?
I'm ready to go, man. I'm excited. I love the NFC South. It's so super competitive, and like every team is good. I guess with the outside team being the Bucs, who are probably going to finish fourth, but they do have talent, and they could make a run at some point if obviously some other things we'll talk about on the next podcast. But it's a really good division with a lot of great players, and they're going to be very high scoring.
Yeah, absolutely. So without further ado, let's jump right into the Saints. So we'll start off at the quarterback position, of course, with Drew Brees, a fixture of really, I guess, the early QB draft picks for quite a while now. This year, Drew Brees is currently going as the fifth pick in the seventh round. As always, our ADPs are from Fantasy Football Calculator. We are using 12-team PPR, so keep that in mind. And as the fifth pick in the seventh round, that puts him at QB6. So a little bit later than we're used to seeing Brees. I think this makes sense. He's getting a bit older. They've been using those running backs a lot in the past couple of years. What do you think about Brees coming off the board at QB6? Do you think that's fair relative to other quarterbacks? And then do you think you'd consider him if he's sitting there for you in the seventh round?
I don't know. I'm having a hard time gauging Brees because I think what they did last year is going to be exactly what they're going to do this year, and that was not be pass heavy. It was going to be a run-focused offense. And I think the suspension to Mark Ingram, which we'll touch on in like a minute, is going to affect like the first 4 games as long as that suspension stands. Like Brees could put up some normal Brees numbers the first 4 games, but then for the rest of the year, I don't know if you can depend on that. Like he might have his blow-up games here and there, but what we saw at the end of last year, like he finished QB9. So at this, you're taking him beyond his ceiling. And I know it's later than we've seen Brees go, but I think you're paying name value on a guy who's probably not going to see the volume that he's dependent on for his like entire fantasy relevancy.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's very important to look at, I guess, the amount of touchdowns that they scored passing versus rushing. Last year, many of their touchdowns or their red zone plays were to the running backs. You saw both Ingram and Kamara having weeks where they both got in the end zone, and some of Kamara's were passing touchdowns. But it's a situation where they really seem to be focusing on that run game. They know they have a great run game, and Brees' stats are kind of taking a backseat to that. So I expect that to continue, just with the strength of their running back core. So let's get right into that running back core because it is very interesting. As you mentioned, Mark Ingram suspended for the first 4 games. He is currently going off the board. Second pick in the 5th round, that's RB25. And his backfield mate last year, a guy who led me to the championship in our league, really probably the main reason that I won, Alvin Kamara, going off the board, 6th pick in the 1st round, and that puts him at RB5. They have a couple other guys hanging around back there, Daniel Lasco, Terrence West, Jonathan Williams. They drafted a rookie named Boston Scott, who I know little to nothing about. I think he was a 5th-round rookie. So beyond that, it's a little bit crowded. We'll see how that shakes out for the first couple of weeks while Ingram is suspended. But what do you think about those 2 main guys, Kamara and Ingram, at their current ADPs?
I think they're both high. I think Kamara's was going to be high, obviously the way he finished the season and destroyed throughout on minimal touches. But, he's great, and I think it's too high, but it's probably pretty fair for what he did last year and the explosiveness that he showed and what his potential is. So I think I'm fine with it. It's just a little too rich for me, and I'd rather take a more dependable guy. And I'm really not sure anymore about the first 4 games for Alvin Kamara's usage. I don't think they're going to want to burn him out in the first 4 games when, you have Mark Ingram coming in a little later. So I don't know if he's going to get a ton of usage either in the first 4 games while Ingram's out. So I'm just having a tough time paying up for Kamara.
Yeah, if you listen to the podcast that you and I did a couple weeks ago where we talked about the first round picks and that sort of thing, I think the opinion for both of us was kind of that Kamara is a little bit overvalued. He led the league in fantasy points per touch last year in PPR. That was 1.59. That's a huge amount of fantasy points per touch. I know, it's not really, it doesn't seem like much in context, but Kamara was, based on his workload, he was just really overproducing and just wildly efficient with his touches. He scored a lot of long touchdowns, things like that. I think the question this year in terms of can he live up to that ADP is he going what is his red zone usage going to look like? He actually led the team in red zone targets last year, so we know that they like using him in the passing game in the red zone. He also got 35% of the red zone carries, but Ingram, I believe, was up around 48% there. So I think that's an interesting question the first couple of weeks in terms of his fantasy value is, does that percentage of red zone carries increase? And if it does, we could see Kamara live up to his ADP. But for me, it's too rich. If I'm drafting a running back in the first round, I want it to be a guy getting 20-plus touches a game. Kamara, last year he was kind of around that 10 to 12 carries and maybe 8 targets. So, I mean, you're likely to get maybe 16 to 18 touches a game from him, but he's not the bell cow. He's not guaranteed to get all the work every week. And personally, I'd just rather pay for a wide receiver in that spot. So, yeah, he's a little overvalued to me. We'll have to see how that all kind of shakes out. What about Ingram? What do you think about his ADP? And then if you do end up drafting Ingram, how does that affect the rest of your draft strategy down the board? Because you're taking a guy in the 5th round that's just a complete zero for the first 4 weeks of the season.
Yeah, and if I'm sure you remember, and I definitely remember, I took Doug Martin and I played the same exact game last year, and it was awful. It was absolutely terrible. And then obviously what we saw out of Doug Martin was he lost his job. He was good for 1 game, and the risk is insanely heavy. And that's why I was saying before that I think they're both high, because Ingram's going in the early 5th round. That's insane. He's missing a 4th of our fantasy season with those 4 games. And I think it's probably going to be upheld. I don't remember where he's at with the appeals or whatever, but it's probably going to stand. And that's just a lot to pay up for and wait. It's really not a great situation.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of downside because, Ingram's been really good. And you and I have both been guys who have banged the drum for Ingram in past years to get more work with them. I mean, for really about a half decade, you and I have been saying, why the fuck do the Saints hate Mark Ingram? Why won't they just give him all the carries and all the passing down work and all of this? And I think if we remember that historically the Saints have hated giving him all the work, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that Ingram just kind of loses his role after those 4 weeks. Say Terrence West has a great 4 weeks running out of the backfield. Like, do you think Sean Payton loves Ingram enough for him to come back and be like, Terrence West, you are nothing now. Ingram has his complete rollback? Because I don't. They fucking hate him. They For whatever reason, Sean Payton has never wanted to give this guy the reins to the offense.
It's so tough to trust. Like, and it was weird that we saw it last year with like the hate flipped over to Adrian Peterson. They didn't give him shit, and then like you saw Ingram getting more involved, and we were just like, what the hell is going on? So Sean Payton's a little tricky, and that's why like this whole grouping of running backs, we don't know where that production is going to go.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a weird situation. Keep an eye on those. On, I guess, sort of the next guy in line during the preseason, because there's a good chance whoever, whether it's Lasco or West or really whoever emerges from that backfield situation behind Kamara, they might be an okay start. If you're going wide receiver heavy early, you might be able to throw in one of those guys within the first 4 weeks of the year, just as a spot start, RB2, flex, whatever the case may be. So keep an eye on that in terms of late round ADP. And guys who you can fill in. Also, if you do end up drafting Ingram, just keep in mind you're going to have that empty slot, so you need to be able to start someone the first couple weeks.
Also, this is probably an under-talked about thing. You will get trade offers for Mark Ingram until he is active, like throughout the season. Like those first 4 games, you will be poked and prodded by league mates constantly. I got a ton of them for Doug Martin, just like the tap potential, and especially if you're not doing good, people will try to take advantage of you. So that's like another underlying thing that you got to wait for. Like maybe you're not doing so hot, and then you just have like this dead bench spot that you might want to get rid of, but you want to hold them. It's just a whole give and take that sucks.
Yeah, you don't really know what Ingram's, and I don't even know when the Saints bye week is, but you don't even really know what Ingram's true role is going to be in that offense till probably after week 6, because then you've got a 2-game sample size of what he's going to do back. So do you want to be 6 games into the season and figuring out what this guy's role is? I don't know. It's
no. The answer is no.
So, yeah, it's tough.
Not advised.
All right, let's move on to the wide receivers here in New Orleans, and we'll start with Michael Thomas, another guy who helped lead me to a championship last year. I fucking love Michael Thomas, and I think he's priced pretty appropriately. He's going off the board, the 3rd pick of the 2nd round. That is wide receiver 5. I have a couple stats on him. He was PPR wide receiver 6 last year, and he did that with only 5 touchdowns. So we talked about how the running backs really sort of dominated the red zone work last year for the Saints. It's one of those where Michael Thomas was 2nd on the team in red zone targets behind Alvin Kamara. He only got those 5 touchdowns. You would think that it's very possible for that number to go up. And again, he was PPR wide receiver 6 last year with that. He had 8 or more targets in 14 out of his 16 games played, and he had 10 or more targets in 8 games. So this is a guy who was really consistent week to week. He's getting the work every week. He's not necessarily going to blow up for you every week, but he gets enough targets to really get you to a very high floor. And if he can eclipse that touchdown mark, which his rookie season, he got 9 of them, then you're really looking at, a top 5 wide receiver that year. So I think he's very accurately priced.
Yeah, dead on. I love Michael Thomas, and he's kind of going in that area where it's sort of preference. It's like Devontae Adams, Michael Thomas, Keenan Allen, those sort of tier guys. And I think they're all great, and I think they're all pretty similar in what you can expect. And I think that it's very accurately priced.
Yeah, those 3 guys specifically that you talked about are all guys with like very high target floors. Yes. So it's one of those where you're looking at guys who might not blow up every single week, but goddamn, you have a floor. So that's certainly good. Let's move on to Cam Meredith, who is the new signing, obviously formerly of the Bears. He's currently going 9th pick in the 11th round. That's wide receiver 52. And then just to go through the rest of the roster, Ted Ginn currently going undrafted. I would expect, him, Meredith, and Thomas to be the 3 guys in most of their 3 wide receiver sets. And then they do have a couple other guys. Traquan Smith is a 3rd-round rookie that they took. Brandon Coleman, Josh Huff, Austin Carr, and then Tommy Lee Lewis have all contributed at different times of their careers. But let's go for Cam Meredith and Ted Ginn. What do you think about Meredith being drafted late and then Ginn not being drafted?
I think Ginn not getting drafted is fine. We saw he was a valuable pickup, I think, for like 1 or 2 weeks last year. It's fine. I hate playing the Ted Ginn game, and you really don't want to do it. So getting undrafted is totally fine with me. I do like the Meredith, how they brought him in. I think he'll be a nice number 2. I just don't know how dependable that's going to be in that offense, like on a week-to-week basis. Like I feel like he'll have his flashes, and it's just probably a flex, like a low-end flex for you. I probably won't even bother in most drafts. But going this late, it's kind of whatever right now. I just don't. I'm eager to see if it creeps up. I'm not really sure what his value is going to be throughout like the preseason if he makes like a long touchdown or something.
Yeah, that's what's
Meredith blow up, but he's coming off an injury and all that. That's
what's going to do it. I think if he has like a preseason 60-yarder where he catches like a curl route, shakes one guy and takes it to the end zone, like ADP is rising to like the 7th round, like right there.
Like that night, like by halftime of that preseason game, Cam Meredith will be in the 7th round.
Yeah, if he stays below the 10th round, he's a guy that I could see certainly having on some teams. We talked about it before. The role of Drew Brees in this offense isn't as much as it used to be. So is there room for another week in, week out productive wide receiver besides Michael Thomas? I'm not really sure. Cam Meredith's shown flashes. He's coming off that injury. There's a lot of uncertainty. Keep an eye on the preseason. Keep an eye on where his price goes. I agree with you on Ted Ginn. He's a guy who will probably get picked up during bye weeks for like the fill-in move where you're like, fuck, I hope he catches a 50-yard touchdown. But that's about it. That's pretty much his role this year. And I think we can safely ignore the rest of the guys that I threw out there on the roster.
He's that like Thursday night play where you're like, I'm going to fucking regret this. And then you get your 2 points at the end of it. You're just like, yep, my fucking week is shot.
Exactly. But it's one of those where you look at it and you're like, is there a chance he catches a bomb and like gets me to like 14 points? Yes, absolutely. But it's like a 30% chance. So I don't know. We'll see. Let's move on to tight end. They have Ben Watson. Ben Watson is 38 years old. He is currently going as the 10th pick in the 14th round. That is tight end 20. I kind of maligned him there, but he did have 79 targets last year. And there's no one else who's really going to take that spot from him. Do you have any interest in him as like a spin the wheel roulette type of tight end?
Dude, I don't care about any goddamn tight end. So anyone going this late and has Drew Brees as their quarterback and did pretty like his blow up season was on the Saints and had a really good rapport with Brees. But this is a whatever pick and tight end is a whatever position. So I wouldn't mind Ben Watson, like whatever. I'm game.
Yeah, I kind of like him better than some of the other tight ends that are going late. Sort of like the guys who don't have full roles, like an OJ Howard or that kind of thing. I think Ben Watson's a little bit higher than tight end 20 for me, but he's certainly not cracking my top 12 tight ends on the year. So it is what it is. If you wait long enough, or maybe if you're the kind of guy who takes 2 tight ends and sees which one pans out, I'm fine with Ben Watson there.
Yeah, that's totally fine.
Do you have anything else you want to touch on the Saints, Vinny?
No, I think we're good. It's going to be fun.
Cool. Let's take a quick break. We'll hear from Auction Draft, and then we will jump right into the Falcons.
Auction Draft is the best site for running your fantasy football auction league in 2018. You can sign up now and get on the list for launch by going to letstalkfantasyfootball.com/auction draft.
All right, guys, that was Auction Draft. We are back now with the Atlanta Falcons. We'll start again at quarterback. We got Matt Ryan. You know him. You may love him. You may not love him. He's currently going off the board. First pick in the 10th round. That is quarterback 12. So Ryan's going a bit lower than he's gone in previous years. He did have a bit of a down year relative to certainly his MVP season the year before. What do you think about Ryan in the 10th round as the 12th quarterback?
Love him as a late, he's becoming like a Phillip Rivers type guy to me in fantasy, where it's like this guy could easily be top 5 and then probably guaranteed top 8. So if you're taking him behind all those guys who people are pumped on, like Jimmy Garoppolo, I think Jared Goff is going right after him, Matthew Stafford before him. it's a fine price to pay. And if you're waiting on QB like us, Matt Ryan could easily, return to form. They pretty much have the same offense they've had for the last couple of years, and they've been electrifying. So seeing him cruise on like to the top 7 quarterbacks, no problem. Get your value right back.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm pretty in on Ryan at his current price. He's a guy that I've historically kind of been out on because I think he's been overvalued. Like he would be like the next guy after that, like elite tier of quarterbacks off the board, where it's just like, wow, you don't need to do that really. But if he's going in the 10th round, like, yeah, no problem.
Exactly.
It's also worth noting that he threw 20 touchdowns last year, which is the lowest amount of touchdowns he's thrown since his rookie year in the NFL. So, I mean, for comparison, the year before he had 38. So if Matt Ryan gets a little bit of positive regression on his touchdowns, gets that up to maybe 26 or so, you're looking at a much better season, and you're looking pretty good with Matt Ryan as your quarterback. So yeah, I am all about Matt Ryan at that price. Let's move to their running backs, who I am never good at really projecting. We have Devontae Freeman going 7th pick in the 2nd round. That's the 12th running back. And then Tevin Coleman going 5th pick in the 6th round. That's the 29th running back. You've historically been way higher on Freeman than me. I've kind of avoided him. What do you think about him this year? Do you have a strong opinion?
I don't, but I think where he's going is totally fine. I feel like you could agree now that he's going like sort of late 2nd, and he's kind of gone there as we've seen. So I think he's appropriately valued, and it's a huge value getting him in the 2nd round, thanks to all the heavy loading of like running back in the beginning of the 1st round. All that value comes back because so many wide receivers are going in the latter half of the 1st and early 2nd. And then you can wind up, stacking. Like you can wind up with Le'Veon Bell and Devonta Freeman. Like that's awesome. He's basically a workhorse if you discount like Tevin Coleman's role, which is, sort of change of pace. Obviously could take over, but if Freeman went down, but Freeman's got a locked in role and he's always performed well.
Yeah, I'm kind of in on Freeman. I'm a guy, like I said, I've never really been in on Freeman. But I think he's accurately priced. I think relative to some other running backs, like, I mean, he's like, why is Freeman so much further down from like Melvin Gordon or like Leonard Fournette or that kind of thing? Like, I don't really understand that completely. Freeman's a guy who's done it in the pass game as well, which is always nice to have. So yeah, I'm about it. Tevin Coleman, he's so dependent. He's basically, if Freeman's healthy, if you're playing Coleman maybe in your flex and you're hoping he scores a touchdown, like that's pretty much it. If Freeman gets hurt, then Coleman, becomes an RB1, RB2 type guy. It's worth noting too that they drafted Ito Smith in the 4th round, who kind of profiles as like a 3rd down back, like a pass catcher type back. So they may try and work him in. I believe Coleman's contract is up after this year, so Ito Smith may be sort of a replacement as that change of pace back for Tevin Coleman. Worth noting, worth keeping an eye on. Not really liking Tevin Coleman's ADP too much. Pretty into Devontae Freeman. Do you have anything else on those running backs?
No, not really. I feel like we're always pretty sour on Coleman's draft ADP, and I feel like that's where he's always gone, like 6th round, like latest probably 7th. People are just so tempted by him. Yeah,
his athletic profile has always been pretty interesting, and he's a guy people are tempted by him because he gets like 8 to 12 touches a game, even when Freeman's healthy. But like, what use is that really? Like I said, when Freeman's healthy, if he's not getting in the end zone, he's not getting you a good game. So it's a little bit difficult to really go after that at that point. Let's move on to the wide receivers. And I think this is one that you and I both have very strong opinions on. Julio fucking Jones going as wide receiver 4, 2nd pick in the 2nd round. When was the last fucking time you could get Julio in the 2nd round?
There wasn't, dude, ever. That's not true, but geez, holy fuck, dude. This guy was going like top 5 last year. This is insane. Absolutely insane. And people are complaining that this is like too high. It's like, what the fuck is wrong with you? When has he ever done anything bad? Oh, he doesn't catch 12 touchdowns a season. Like, are you kidding me? He goes well over 1,000 yards every season, always in 80-plus territory with catches. This is absolutely absurd that people are complaining about this one. Contract shit aside, he's going to be back. He'll get his contract. Who cares? Second-round value for Julio Jones. Pull the trigger every single time.
Yeah, I mean, the public perception, I feel like, on Julio is that he had a down year last year and he had a bad year. Julio Jones had 88 catches for 1,444 yards.
Yeah.
That's on 100
What is the problem?
Targets. The issue is he had a couple bad plays in the red zone, and he only finished with 3 touchdowns. I talked about it before. Matt Ryan only threw 20 touchdowns last year. And this is also the second year with Steve Sarkisian as their offensive coordinator. You would think in year 2, he would have a better idea of how to maximize Julio's talent, particularly in the red zone. So we don't need Julio to get to double digits, but if Julio puts up a similar year to last year, but instead of 3 touchdowns, he has 7 touchdowns, like, huge difference and completely fucking reasonable. Like, it's astounding to me how much people think that just like, oh man, he had a really, really down year. He had 1,444 yards last year.
Dude, the disrespect level that I've seen with Julio Jones and AJ Green this year is I can't even fathom this shit. It's just unbelievable. Julio Jones catches 3 touchdowns and is wide receiver 7, and people are scared to draft him. What are you doing? I do not understand that.
I don't know. And I think part of the perception too is that he can be inconsistent, but
he's not that inconsistent. He blows up and he has games where it's like 12 to 16 points sometimes, and everyone bums you out a few weeks. It's not a big deal.
I mean, 8 or more targets in 11 games last year. You're not going to get many wide receivers who are going to give you that kind of target level week to week. It's really is just because of the touchdowns. I think that he's getting this bad rap.
That could flip in a second.
Yeah, 100%. If you're sitting at like that turn or the beginning of the second round and you're not taking Julio, you and I have very different thoughts about how to win fantasy football leagues.
Yeah, that's just. Oh my God, man! It's too early for this. I hope it corrects and he creeps back into the first, because this is. I
want to take fucking advantage of it.
I mean, I know doing that would be awesome, but sit him at 202 is just. It's not right. It's not right.
No, it is. It is definitely not right. We'll see how it kind of works out. I have a feeling as like the Beckham holdout status thing kind of keeps going. Like,
but Julio's holding out too.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see how it goes. Either way, like I said, if you're not taking him there, like, what the fuck are you doing? So the other wide receivers on this team who matter at this current moment are the rookie Calvin Ridley out of Alabama, who is being drafted with the 2nd pick in the 10th round. That is wide receiver 45. And then Mohamed Sanu being drafted the 10th pick of the 14th round. That is wide receiver 66. I don't have a particularly strong take on Ridley. I mean, Sanu, we kind of know what he is. Do you like these prices? Do you have strong opinions on either of these guys?
I really don't. I mean, Sanu, as okay as he was, like, saved my ass like late in the season because I had nobody and I had to pick up scraps, and Sanu was like constantly getting 8 points. Just 8 points like every week, and like his max was 16. So that's like his floor and ceiling. Ridley is a nice addition to the offense, but I really don't. I wouldn't like care if I drafted him or not. Like 10th is like, all right, sure. If you like him, you like him. It's going to be like probably a Galladay situation for this offense. He'll make a couple good plays. It takes a while to get integrated to the NFL as a wide receiver, I think, longer than most positions. So taking a rookie wide receiver is always a little risky. I feel like he'll blow up some games, disappear for a ton. So I'm not really too high on him. So I probably wouldn't do that. And then Sanu is just like very last pick ad, just so you have some bench.
Yeah, Sanu's a guy that I could see being added and dropped. Like he'll be owned. Like by the end of the season, like 4 different people in your league will have owned him, and like 3 of them will have started him just as like a bye week fill in. But I'm not sure.
The league slut, yes.
That was it. Who was it? The first year that we coined that, it was Brandon Jacobs.
Brandon Jacobs. Everybody was just trading him and passing him around, and
yeah, it got passed around the whole league. Anyway. I think relative to Calvin Ridley, he's going a round and a half in front of Cam Meredith, who we just talked about with the Saints, and I think I'd rather just draft Cam Meredith. Am I off base with that?
No, definitely not. That's actually a great call. I was going to look at the ADPs, but
yeah, the guys going around him are like Sterling Shepard, Nelson Aguilar, DJ Moore, who's a rookie with the Panthers, Kelvin Benjamin, Marquise Lee, like Kenny Stills, these kind of guys. So. For me, it's not a guy that I'm going to be actively targeting unless we really see some interesting things in the preseason. And even then, preseason hype can not necessarily be the best indicator. So just keep that in mind. If he's there, late on your board, don't shy away. But it's not someone you need to target. In terms of the rest of the passing game, we have Austin Hooper at tight end. He's a guy that you and I really hyped up a lot last year. Didn't particularly work out for us. Had that big week 1 where he got like 2 targets and one of them was like a busted coverage for an 80-yard touchdown. So like the results were good. I guess the process didn't really work out, but he's currently undrafted. I don't know. Do you think he should be drafted?
With some of the guys that I've seen that are getting drafted, like Vance McDonald and all that kind of garbage at the end, like it's kind of surprising because the hype really died. It is worth mentioning that they brought in Logan Paulson, a dude that you've actually loved a lot. Is being brought in. So I think like it's just going to be a weird tight end committee, as talented as Hooper is and as reliable as Paulson can be. It's just going to be not enough volume to support either of their position, like in fantasy. So I just don't really. It's okay that he's not getting drafted.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. He did have 65 targets last year. It was his second season. So, I mean, he's the kind of guy where if they hadn't drafted Ridley, I think I would be very excited about the prospects of Austin Hooper. But with Ridley soaking up, what you would think would be at least another 60 targets, that kind of thing, it's a little difficult to get excited about him. I should note that they brought in Logan Paulson, but they let Levi and Toilolo go. He had 496 snaps for them. A lot of them were on the field with Hooper, but still. And then also that Hooper did grade out as Pro Football Focus's 9th ranked tight end in run blocking last year. So for me, part of what I thought part of my impression of Hooper was that he wasn't a great blocker and he wasn't staying on the field because of that. But it turns out he actually is a pretty good blocker. I would think he'll be on the field for at least 70% of snaps, which, can be worth it. I think he's a bye week fill-in. I'm sure I'll play him as a cheap tight end in DFS some weeks this year. But yeah, I don't think he needs to be drafted at this point.
Yeah, very much agreed.
Cool. You got anything else on the Falcons, or should we wrap this one up?
Let's wrap this baby up, and I guess.
Oh, okay, sweet. Let's tie this bitch up. Yeah. All right. So guys, we will be back in a matter of days, hours. I don't know, something like that. With the other 2 teams in the NFC South, that is the Panthers and the Bucks. Keep an eye out for that. Make sure you are checking out Auction Draft. You heard about them at the beginning and in the middle of the podcast. Get preparing, get mocking, get listening to what you can. Vinny, you got anything else for the people?
No, mocking is very important. I actually did my I think I'm on mock 3 of the year, but a couple of days ago I did my first mock and it was terrifying. It was just like, whoa, my team is ass. So, get that cold bucket of water on you real quick, and then you'll start getting into the groove of it.
Somehow I drafted Frank Gore twice. What?
Frank Gore, Doug Martin. I was just like, what is going on?
Yeah, absolutely. So for Vinny, I am Walsh, and later podcast.
This has been Let's Talk Fantasy Football. Thanks for listening.